Wild Health is about optimizing you. We use genomics, blood work, biometrics, microbiome assessment, many other tests, and a conversation with you to come up with a full health optimization plan. What's the perfect diet, exercise, and supplement plan for you and only you? The Wild Health podcast is about optimizing all of us. Here we cover the cutting-edge science that gives you the base to be able to apply the personalized plan we give you as a patient. To sign up as a patient, go to wildhealth.com. Or if you're a physician or health coach and you want to learn how to do this for your patients, we're happy to help as well. Wildhealth.com for all the information on becoming a patient or working with us.
Hey Carl, what's going on,
Hey,
man?
nothing, man. Sometimes we get some questions about Vegas.
Las Vegas?
No, different Vegas. Vegas
Huh.
nerve. You ever heard of it?
Oh, I've heard of the
It's,
Vegas.
it's a really terrible joke I just made. It's really
Yeah, it
awful.
was really bad. It
Yeah.
was not your
But
best.
no, so we get some questions about the vagus nerve, because it's discussed so much in people's health and how they function, how their body functions, and people get kind of confused about what this is. I think it maybe makes sense to go through just like a very brief overview of what the vagus nerve is, what it does, and what its role is in the body. I guess if we could start there, and then you could kind of maybe expand, and we can kind of go through some questions about what the vagus nerve is.
I love it. You're bringing me all the way back to what are we? Where are we? First year of med school, talking about the
Yeah,
vagus nerve. I like it.
yeah,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
more than a hot minute ago.
No, but we did
I'll
that in undergrad though. Like you did,
I
you
guess
probably did
so.
anatomy in undergrad. Maybe you
Yeah, but
didn't.
that's like even more than a hot minute ago. All right, I'm gonna do my best.
All right.
So the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the body. Exits the brain and goes basically all the way down. It plays a crucial
Yeah.
role in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is part of our autonomic nervous system. So, you think about the autonomic nervous system. So, how fast your heart's beating, right? None of us are sitting, unless you're, a real amazing yogi breathwork person. Nobody's, thinking about how fast their heart's beating and regulating that, as opposed to thinking about moving their arm or writing something on a piece of paper. And the parasympathetic portion, the autonomic nervous system has this balance of the sympathetic and parasympathetic, sympathetic being classically kind of fight or flight or freeze, and then parasympathetic being rest and digest, which it's always called that because it rhymes, so it helps people remember it. But it's really responsible for regulating a host of bodily functions, including heart rate, digestion, breathing, immune response. So super important sort of master regulator of the parasympathetic nervous system.
Well, that seems important. Is it? That seems
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely want a vagus nerve.
You want to be, although like people, isn't remember those? Isn't there like really? There's times where they lacerate and cut the vagus nerve on purpose, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
this
kind
is
of.
a this is an edge case scenario. We're not recommending
Yeah,
that
right.
for anyone.
Uh, so all right. So, but that's what the vagus nerve is. So how does that affect or relate to like our overall well-being, our overall health? Like tie that,
Yeah, I mean,
land that plane.
land that plane. Well, if we're regulating things like heart rate, digestion, breathing, and immune response, it's not a huge stretch to see that it's going to have a profound impact on things like stress, relaxation, a good digestive system, decreasing inflammation in, say, like an autoimmune situation or a chronic inflammation situation, enhancing our mood, and just generally supporting good cardiovascular function. So, if you've got a good mood, you're digesting well, you don't have inflammation, you're not stressed, you're pretty relaxed, like that's how it's going to affect our well-being. Is it's going to lead to that sort of Zen state of physiology for us.
So how does that relate to like when people use the term like you got good vagal tone, or bad vagal tone, like good tone? I think of Maverick or something, Top Gun. I've got
I
good
got
tone.
tone.
I'm
I've got
firing.
tone. Yeah, the vagal, it's like firing stuffed animals with vagal tone, right? You're not firing heat-seeking missiles. It's like
Yeah.
we're like nighty night tea. So I think that this whole concept of vagal tone is I have a little bit of a pet peeve around like
Yeah.
the House of Medicine creating terminology just to make things more confusing for people, right? Like, I don't know that vagal tone adds much. Higher vagal tone is a way of saying that your vagus nerve is functioning well,
Yeah.
and basically indicates that you've got like a more active and responsive vagus nerve. So when it is time for you to rest and digest and relax and de-stress, you're able to do that. So a higher vagal tone is basically going to be associated with better mental health, improved stress resilience, overall well-being. But I think it's really, for me, the linchpin there is like the stress resilience. It's, we want to be able to be stressed when it's appropriate, right? Whether it's a physical stress and like a challenging VO2 max workout, which we talked about
Yeah.
recently, or it's it's a stressful situation that you need to diffuse if you're, a firefighter coming onto a scene. Like, that's all important for us to be able to react. That, or there's a lion, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, this is how
Yeah.
we evolved. But it's your ability to then turn that off
Yes.
and get everything regulated back down. That's really governed in part by the vagus nerve. So having a good vagal tone means you're able to kind of switch back into that parasympathetic mode, and a whole host of things gets thrown out of whack when that's not happening, right? I mean, you think about like the hypervigilance of somebody who's suffering with post-traumatic stress disorder, right? It's that inability to really get out of the sympathetic system and back into the parasympathetic system, where vagal tone would be really critical.
Yeah. So okay. So you kind of touched on where that what it looks like to have a poorly functioning vagus nerve, and that's helpful. What I guess one of the things I would ask then, my natural inclination would be like, okay, how do I make that work better? How do I improve the function of my vagus nerve? How do I get good tone?
Yeah, you can get good tone, Carl. I think you're already doing, I mean, knowing you, I know you're already doing lots of stuff that's going to enhance your vagal tone and improve your vagus nerve function. Breath work is probably like one, two, and three on the list for me. But I think deep breathing exercises, that could be just conscious connected breathing, that can be, box breathing or 5-7-8 or any variation of conscious breathing. You don't need to go into a 45-minute like holotropic all out breathing session to improve your vagal tone. You
You
can do
can.
just
It's rad,
you
but
definitely can, and I would highly recommend it for people,
yeah,
but not necessarily for vagal
yeah,
tone improvement. I
yeah,
think if you can pause a few times a day, even, and just consciously regulate your breath, that's going to definitely improve the function of your vagus nerve. And then, if you think about sort of the vagus nerve is the rest and digest nerve, all the things that kind of fall into that like Venn diagram with rest and digest. So
yeah.
meditation, yoga, singing, chanting, cold exposure,
Ooh,
regular exercise is always thrown out there. I think of that as being more like, zone two, something just to kind of condition yourself without being, a really intense workout. Adequate sleep is high up on the list, and then I knew you were going to love this one. Laughter
oh,
is a solid way of stimulating the vagus nerve, and we've done a laughter as medicine
yeah.
podcast, but there's a physiologic correlate to why that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think when I look at that list, yeah, I'll get. I got everything on that list except for one.
You're not
That's
chanting.
Oh well, I guess chanting or singing. You catch me in the car. There's some Pearl Jam playing. Everybody thinks Eddie Vedder's in their range. He's not. He's just
No.
not.
No.
But I got all that except for the cold exposure is definitely my white whale. I'm working on it though. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I do have so when another thing that I don't see on this list that I'd like to sort of explore is can you do things from a dietary? When I hear rest and digest, I think like, well, your diet has to play some sort of role in nutrition. So can that affect your vagus nerve and its function and your vagal tone?
Yeah, well, let me ask you a quick question in response, and then I'll answer your question.
Uh,
So, knowing what we've covered about the vagus nerve, do you think you'd want pro-inflammatory foods to enhance your vagus nerve function or anti-inflammatory foods?
Anti?
Yes, good.
Yes. I
50
still got my
50.
ability to answer questions. It's still sucked in there somewhere after years of true, false, multiple choices.
I know. Let's talk about PTSD.
Yeah.
So consuming anti-inflammatory foods, right? So think like, what is that? Turmeric, which is rich in curcumin, leafy greens, omega-3 fatty acids. Those are all foods that I would recommend for somebody trying to improve and influence their vagal nerve tone or vagal nerve function. Healthy gut microbiome is really important. Like, the gut everything axis is just exploding in the last 20 years in the ways that we know that gut health is tied not only to cognitive function but chronic stress, insulin resistance, etc. So maintaining a really good healthy gut microbiome, and that's typically making sure that you're not one of the majority of Americans who don't get enough fiber in their diets. So, aiming for upwards of 30 grams of fiber as a female, and probably closer to 40 grams of fiber a day as a male. Maintaining probiotics in your food, so things like yogurts, and if you can tolerate dairy, things like sauerkraut, kimchi, etc. And just doing things to treat your gut well, so that you can maintain that healthy gut microbiome.
Okay, so what other? I mean, that's great, but what other lifestyle things can you do to kind of modify or positively affect? We'll say on the positive, positively affect your vagus nerve to kind of improve your tone outside of diet.
Well, I mean, outside of diet / meditation, yoga, chanting, cold exposure, exercise, all the other things we talked about, I think the other things I would put in there would be additional stress reducing activities, right? Because sitting and meditating is not for everyone. Sitting and doing deep breathing isn't for everyone. But socializing with and spending time with people who bring you joy and who you love. Gratitude journaling. I know lots of great evidence around gratitude journaling and just practicing gratitude, random acts of kindness, nature bathing. So just spending time out in nature. And then I'll probably just put an exclamation point on sleep, because you can't overemphasize it. I think all of those are actionable, accessible, largely free ways that we can improve our vagal tone and improve our parasympathetic nervous system and get us that kind of stress resiliency that we want to be able to turn off when it's time to turn off.
Wow. I think I'm out of questions. That was good.
Boom.
Thanks, man.
Vagus nerve in 12 minutes. That's what I'm looking for.
Viva Las Vegas.
All right, man. Thanks, Carl.
Spelled different. Yep, thank you. All right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you're a Wild Health patient, you might not know, but you have access to our referral program. This gets your friends and family 25% off Wild Health services. Just head to Clarity, and in the top right corner, you'll see Refer a Friend. Click there, and you'll be brought to a page with your referral code. Happy sharing.